Hi. Today I'm doing a little recap of the Board of Supervisors meeting that we held yesterday, which would have been the 4th of November. I also think it was a record-breaking length of meeting. It went from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. See, I'm still foggy from it all, but it was a super long one, so bear with me while I run through some of the things that we discussed and decided. First of all, our office did a couple of proclamations. One was recognizing the Tucson Indian Center and the incredible work that they have done, recognizing their executive director, Jacob Bernal, who has been there for 35 years, as well as their board chair, and just their tremendous contribution to the community. We also had a proclamation celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance, and called it Altar Valley Conservation Month. The Conservation Alliance is it's a national model for a collaborative approach to land conservation. They do amazing work in the area, and so much needed recognition. We did a few other proclamations, but I'm going to just dig into some of the other things that we discussed. So we passed a motion that actually our office introduced. That was to call on the governor and state legislative leaders to address the problem of short-term rentals. And in particular, if you think about communities like Bisbee and Sedona and Williams, are hit particularly hard, but we estimate that there's about 6,000 short-term rentals in Tucson alone, which doesn't include the other areas right in the rest of Pima County. The problem with short-term rentals is largely when there are out-of-state corporations that come in, buy up housing stock when it becomes available in the communities, and then turn them into short-term rentals. What that does is it takes houses and apartments out of the rental and housing stock for people who live here, which then exacerbates our housing crisis. And it decreases supply, which then means that it increases rents and housing prices. So this is an issue that local government, the county, would love to have more decision making over, but right now the state legislature, the Republican controlled state legislature, doesn't allow us to do that. So this is calling on them to help restore the freedom of local governments to be able to make decisions about short-term rentals. So that passed, and we will continue to pursue it. We also approved a intergovernmental agreement with the state for the county to fund up to about $400,000 to it's kind of a cash flow issue with the government shutdown, that money isn't getting to Pima County's WIC program, Women, Infants, Children, that is run by the Pima County Health Department. There's concerns about money not reaching the program. So we are making sure that we do not end up in a situation where infants do not have formula. And so we approved a sort of a transfer of funds up. Our fingers crossed that we get this money reimbursed, and or that money gets released. I know that is it's been in flux what money is getting released and when and how long it takes to get released and so on. So we did this to just cover our bases and not put women, infants, and children at risk. We had two items that were kind of clustered together. So one was around providing support to food banks in Southern Arizona. The other was providing support to refugee resettlement agencies in the community. So on the first one around food banks, a colleague had introduced allocating $600,000 for the community. I was going to say Community Foundation, the food bank of Southern Arizona, $200K to the Sahuarita Food Bank, and and we had representatives there from not only those two food banks, as well as folks from Arivaca and Vale, Interfaith, and others. The other item for refugee resettlement that was, as it was written, was to provide $250K to 3 refugee resettlement organizations. They were lumped together because in combination, that is, it's almost $800K, $750K. We're gonna say it's almost $2 million. The problem is this, and what ultimately ended up happening is that we continued those 2 items to be discussed at our next meeting and on the next agenda. But here's what the challenge really is. The county has set aside at the beginning of our fiscal year, which was just a couple months ago, $1 million in what we call contingency funding. We have already spent about 150,000 of it. So, we've got $850K left. In our contingency, these requests is over 2 million. I think the idea was to actually take that money from our projected cash reserves, which is looking like, if we project out, that we could have about $9 million of cash reserves by, towards the end of the year when it all gets reconciled. However, I've run organizations before that. Drawing from the cash reserves feels too risky for me, given that we are just 4 months, 4 months into our budget, and we are 10 months into a Trump administration that is slashing the social safety net and benefit programs for everyone, essentially, right? And that we are just at the beginning, 10 months of a 4-year term. So I'm hesitant for us to put that kind of outlay of funds out this early. I know there is need, and believe me, I hear it and I see it. So all that is to say, we pushed it off to discuss it again next week so that we have a little more time to kind of think bigger picture, because we know that its impacts on food and having food stability today. It is going to be an eviction crisis, I would expect, in the next few weeks, which is going to also contribute to an uptick in the unhoused. And then we also know just on the horizon is going to be a healthcare crisis as cuts to access start to kick in the state. So all that is to say, we just have to have a sense of the bigger picture of the financial impacts on the budget in our community, and set some priorities of what it makes sense for us at the county to be able to do. So those will come back up. We also voted on setting the date for a joint meeting. The City of Tucson, Mayor and Council, and the Board of Supervisors are going to sit down for definitely since the first in my 10 months, but I think it's the first time this has happened for a while, on November 18th from 12 to 2:30 to talk about issues that we can work on together. We also, at our request, tabled until our January meeting 4 agenda items that relate to El Rio Sol and Sunzia transmission lines. These are two transmission lines that will be going essentially from Texas, maybe New Mexico, to Southern California. One of them is clean energy derived, the other is fossil fuel energy derived, and they run parallel to each other. These transmission lines have been challenged in the courts by the Tohono Nation and the Center for Biological Diversity because they run through the San Pedro Valley here in southern Arizona. The lawsuit, the nation has outlined in the lawsuit that they were not effectively consulted with. That this is the San Pedro Valley is a historically, culturally rich area that necessitated really extensive consultations with the nation, and those did not happen. So our motion was that we should not approve those items. We should take them off the agenda. And especially because we don't want to be approving something that is going to be negatively impacting the litigation by the nation and the Center for Biological Diversity. So that was approved. We will be discussing it again in January, and at that point looking to see kind of where things are at with the lawsuit and ensuring that the county is not taking any actions that are going to be undermining our partners of the nation or allies at the center. We also approved supporting the Arizona Attorney General's lawsuit, calling on the Speaker, House Speaker Johnson, to seat my Congresswoman-elect, Adelita Grijalva, and my former colleague here on the Board of Supervisors. It's about time that she got sworn in so that we could have congressional representation here in Southern Arizona. The last one we had passed, that we passed, was directing the Pima County lobbyist to work with two state agencies, the Department of Economic Security and the Department of Transportation, specifically around kind of making some fixes and clarifications to some of their rules so that it can remove some unnecessary barriers and streamline processes for refugees. So the agenda item detailed out some various hurdles and obstacles around work permits and driver's licenses and things that can create some confusion and just some real challenges for folks to be able to continue with work authorization and identification. So sending those out to our lobbyists to keep pushing at the state. If you have any questions or any suggestions, comments, feel free to reach out. And until our next meeting in a couple weeks, thanks a lot.